All right. This isn't really a message. Just a talk on home cell groups. There's a book called Successful Home Cell Groups by Paul Yongi Cho. He's a pastor of one of the largest churches in the world in Seoul, North Korea. Anyway, I started reading the book. I went to buy the book online, so I went to Google and I typed in Successful Home Cell Groups, Paul Cho, and the third one down was a free PDF, so I'm reading it online for the second time. I've read it before at least once, maybe twice. But the idea in it is he gets his research from the Book of Acts largely, and he's talking about how there were churches in people's homes and how they met in the temple, and they also met from house to house. And so in the temple they had their main meetings, and then in house to house they had their said they were breaking bread and reading the word from house to house. Anyway, this minister Paul Cho, he was really ambitious pastor. He wanted to have the biggest church in his area, Seoul, which is a pretty big town, and eventually, anyway, he was pretty ambitious, and he wore himself out because if we all know somebody like this probably, the A-type alpha type personality that it's hard to trust people, and they would do a lot of work themselves and they don't delegate, and maybe we all have a lot of this. Anyway, so he was like that. His church was growing, and he was doing everything. And he had an assistant pastor, and he didn't. As an example, he didn't. He had, 300 people to baptize one day, and his assistant pastor said that he looked worn out, and he said, "No, I want to do them all," and he ended up baptizing them all. I think. Anyway, that was around the time. I don't know if it was exactly then, but it was around the time he passed out and was taken to the hospital for exhaustion, and so he just worked himself to the ground and ended up in the hospital, and he got really weak, and his recovery took 10 years, and he anyway. In his he had to seek God as to how God told him he still wanted to be the pastor, and he still wanted his church to grow, and how to do it was through home cell groups. And so he gave him ideas, and I'm just in the beginning of the first 3 chapters, and the 7 things that happened that got in the way of home cell groups. I might as well just tell the stories thus far. So he brings it up to the deacons, and says, the idea, and he goes through the scriptures with them. And the deacons are men, and they're working, and they say, well, we're too tired. We don't, we don't going to have the energy to do a home cell group. So then he was like, wow, But he was praying, and meanwhile, and God said, this is what I want. And so he's talking to this lady friend he has, and he says, so none of the deacons, they didn't want to do it. And she goes, well, you have deaconesses here. To see if they'll do it, because they don't work, because it's kind of a patriarchal society, and they were, the housekeepers, and so they didn't, they had more time in their hands, a little more relaxed environment. And so that's what happened. It started out with the women teaching the home cell groups because they had the time, and it ends up one of the first things that happened was. He just released them to go, and a lot of them were trained, and so he found out there was some strange teachings going on, and so he went and he said, okay, he's going to teach the lesson and give the weekly lesson to the people, the teachers. So that's what he'd do. So one day a week he would give the lesson to them, and then they would go use that lesson out, and then another thing was that came up was the time, and then they turned into a party, and the people ended up going home late, and some of them, didn't get, the women didn't get time there to cook, or the men didn't spend time with their kids, so they put an hour time limit on it, and then they put refreshments at the end, because if they put refreshments at the beginning, then they could never get everything done in an hour. So, and then there was, who wanted to host, and then the hosters started competing with, what bigger and bigger refreshments, and then they whittled it down to refreshments just going to be tea and cookies, and at the end. And anyway, things happened and things went on, and they had different things. And one of the last things that happened was they had 150 groups, and he put 3 pastors in charge of 50 groups to kind of oversee the 50 groups. And these 3 pastors got together and said, well, the people trust us more than the head pastor, so why don't we take our groups and start another church? And they tried doing that, but the people didn't. The people that were supposed to go, very few of them showed up, and it didn't work, and they ended up, being ostracized and having to leave and go somewhere else. But there were 7 things that happened, and that's 3 or 4 of them. And I went to a church that it was one of the biggest churches I went to for any period of time, and they used that model. They had the book Successful Home Cell Groups, and Paul Cho had been there a few times, and I heard him speak once or twice, and he seemed like a nice guy. But I guess the thing that comes out, neither one of them. Well, Paul Cho, when he started, he had a big ego, and he wanted to build the church in his power and his steam and his ideas. And then God, he had that breakdown, and God got a hold of him and told him what to do. And then for a while, he had the biggest church in the world, and I'm not sure anymore. I mean, as the time of the book was written, he had about 150,000 people in his church. And but it helps. I go to a group Sunday night sometimes, and it's called Open Portal, and it's nice. And their mission is to get people to exercise their gifts. And it starts at 4:30 or 5, and it goes on late till 9 or 10, and that's a long time. And but the thing is, what's good about it is, you go to church and you're kind of in spectator mode, and you go there and you're encouraged to give a testimony, and then somebody will do a teaching, and then you're encouraged to give a testimony that goes along with the teaching, and then several times throughout the night and it's kind of open door, and you can, if you feel led to pray for anybody at any time, you pretty much do, and there's food there, so it's a real kind of wide open service. It's not a traditional service by any means. But the good thing is, if you want to pray for people, if you want to work on your or get prayed for, I've done that before. I've been dire straits, and I've gone there and just grab people and say, "Hey, pray for me," and nice place to go for that. But the churches, you may not feel that comfortable, because you go to church, and maybe it's a big church, and you don't know the pastors that well, you don't know the leaders, and it's nicer to get prayer from somebody you know. And so the home cell groups, it fosters a sense of community. In fact, this book I'm finishing, I think the Ecclesia, one of the definitions is community. And let's be honest, in the big church, on the Sunday service, as an example, only so many people can get involved. You can get some people teaching kids. What else is there? Some people are going to be part of the prayer team when it's done. Maybe somebody is allowed to give an exhortation, but there's very few people that are involved. And so that's the reason for the home cell groups. One of the scriptures that came out was the fivefold ministers, for God has given some apostles, prophets, pastors, teachers, and evangelists for the teaching of the saints, for the work of the ministry. So you were supposed to build up the lay people so they can do the work inside the church and outside. And the home groups give them opportunities not only to get to know each other, but also to use their giftings. And so that's about it. I went to the church. I remember I went to 3 different groups I went to church probably for 2 years. I went to 3 different groups, and at the time I was going to Bible school. I'd just been married. It was a real stressful time in my life because I just been moved to a new area, moved to Oklahoma, and just got married, and was going to Bible school and working full time. So it was real. And then to go to church on top of that, like I did, and then go to some of these cell meetings. So I wasn't in the normal state of mind. I was really working a lot harder than I normally would. And so it's kind of hard for me to reflect on that. But I did enjoy it. You sit in somebody's house and you read the Bible and you pray for each other, and you get to know each other, you hug, and you get to know somebody. And I used to say, unless you've sat down and eaten with somebody a few times, you don't really know them. And I even had a ministry one time, and it was called Come and Dine Ministries. And I don't think I followed through on that, but I did it because I did a teaching on PBS for an hour, and they had so what's the name of your ministry? And I just said it off on the fly. Come and dine, So anyway, I just want to share a little bit about that book, and you can find it online. It's called Successful Home Cell Groups by Dr. Paul Yongi Cho. And if you go Google, the third one down, it's a free PDF, and I'm a big fan of free books. But you can't take it with you to show people, but you can find it online. So anyway, food for thought, and that's the next book I'm reading. So God bless you. Pray you have a good tomorrow. Go to church tomorrow. Call somebody to take you, to go with you, or find somebody to come or just read the Bible. You can't. I got a friend in Missouri, and Linda, if you're listening, just crack the Bible open over the table and be like the Waltons, and just read a chapter and pray for your family. All right, so everybody, God bless you, and have a good week.